Lecturer, consultant, author, and coach Dr. Carl Albrecht explained in Psychology Today that every conversation is made up of three key elements. 1. Declaratives. 2. Questions. 3. Qualifiers. Declaratives are simply statements of fact. For example, the sky is blue. However, to make things more complicated, they aren't always exactly facts, but opinions that are presented as though they are facts. Light blue is too weak a color to wear to that job interview. Questions are self-explanatory, although this doesn't include rhetorical questions that take the grammatical form of a question, but are not literally asking the other person to respond. For example, what is it with this weather today? What's your favorite color? What should I wear to the interview? Finally, qualifiers are something we've encountered already and include any words or phrases intended to soften or moderate what is being said. For example, in my opinion, I'm wondering if... I could be wrong, but as far as I know, I'm not speaking for everyone here, but... Qualifiers are also great at helping you express uncertainty or make a claim, but not too strongly. So instead of saying that light blue is a weak color, you could say it might be a slightly weak color. Instead of saying Freud was a pervert, you say, in my opinion, it may be the case that Freud in fact had a distorted sexuality. Now, Albrecht suggested what he calls the rule of three. Simply, in a conversation, make sure that you are never making three declarative statements in a row. Instead, include plenty of questions or qualifiers, i.e., softer and more moderate declaratives, to give your speech a little more flexibility. Crucially, doing so will make sure that the conversation doesn't become bogged down in ego and narcissism. A question is a way to bat the conversational ball over the net and to the other person, who is then invited to say what they want to before batting the ball back again. A modifier is halfway between a question and a declarative statement. You say what you want to say, but you leave a little room in there for someone else to add what they want to. There's nothing wrong with a declarative per se, but it is the sort of thing that closes off any avenues for connection, beyond bland agreement or outright disagreement, that is, both of which do not actually further the conversation. Try it, and you may be surprised at just how much more your conversations flow, and you'll come across as more likable too. Understanding the rule of three means you won't soon run out of things to say in any conversation. You can basically never go wrong if you A. ask a question, or B. say whatever declarative statement you were just about to say, but soften it with a qualifier. Consider the following conversation. I got this really bad shoulder pain. The physiotherapist says it's bursitis. Wow, bursitis. My grandmother had that last year. It's more common than you think, you know. Yeah, well, it's the first I've heard of it. Apparently it was most likely caused by the COVID vaccine. Well, you have to consider all the possible cases. There are lots of things that could be to blame. It's actually repetitive strain that causes most cases of bursitis. Sure, yeah. Anyway, my physiotherapist says it's an injury that can happen when the needle is placed just slightly in the wrong place. A lot of those people giving vaccines didn't get the right training. Well, let me tell you, it hurts like hell. I'm sure. The best thing would be to have plenty of rest, I guess. Now, take a look at the above conversation and ask yourself how much you like person B. They're not being a conversational narcissist in the sense that It's all me, me, me. But somehow their ego seems to loom large in the exchange above. Why? You'll notice that everything that person B says is a declarative statement. It gives the conversation a flat, dead feeling. After a declarative, there's not much to do except agree, disagree, or stop talking. In the extreme, too many declaratives like this can actually make the person seem as though they are lecturing, preaching, or explaining, i.e., it can feel very dull and even condescending. Let's look at a different conversation. I've got this really bad shoulder pain. The physiotherapist says it's bursitis. Wow, bursitis. My grandmother had that last year. It's more common than you think, Yeah, well, it's the first I've heard of it. Apparently it was most likely caused by the COVID vaccine. Really? Well, that's interesting. You mean you had a bad reaction to something that was in the vaccine? Actually, no. My physiotherapist says it's an injury that can happen when the needle is placed just slightly in the wrong place. Ouch! Well, I may be wrong about this, but I seem to remember reading an article last year about how many volunteers had emergency training to learn to give the vaccine. Maybe the person who jabbed you just wasn't all that experienced? Yeah, exactly. That's what I think, too. It's annoying because it really hurts. I can imagine. What do you think you'll do now? Have you got something relaxing planned for the weekend? First, just ask yourself which person you feel is more likable. The two conversations are very, very similar. Both are perfectly acceptable, and there's no offense caused or any major rupture in social etiquette in either one. And yet, even in this short interaction, you can probably see the big difference the rule of three makes, and how a person using declaratives 100% comes across so differently from someone using a mix of all three conversational types. Person B likely doesn't believe themselves to be bad at conversation, but they nevertheless will be perceived as less friendly, less likable, and somehow less enjoyable to speak to. The effect of such interactions gradually and imperceptibly adds up. Others may not be able to put their finger on why, but they may feel that person B is a bit boring, stuck up, rude, or a know-it-all. Crucially, it's not about the content of what you say. It's about the emotional implications and the energy in how you say it. Questions convey a sense of openness, possibility, humility, and receptivity. They can be playful and respectful, and can demonstrate empathy and compassion, as well as the covert message, I like you, I'm interested. Tell me more. Qualified statements send a similar message. They say something, but it's a soft something. They signal to the other person that you are amenable, flexible, and ready to discuss and move with the flow. Declaratives, however, are a little like dead ends. They are pronouncements made that usually signal the end of conversation, rather than its beginning. They position you as a speaker with authority, and the other person as someone who is there primarily to hear this authority. Though there is absolutely a time and place for this energy, giving speeches, setting boundaries, or literally teaching someone, too much of it means you're talking at rather than talking with. In other words, questions and qualifiers open up a little room that invites the other person into the conversation. Declaratives tend to focus only on you and your message, while closing out the other person. Light blue is such a weak color. Is it? Says who? Literally imagine someone said this to you. Can you feel how difficult it is to say anything in response? Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but I've never really liked light blue. Can you see how it's possible to have a strong opinion, but nevertheless frame it as exactly that, an opinion, and leave plenty of space for someone to respond and keep the conversation going? What's your favorite color? A question immediately opens up the conversation and signals that you are willing and able to share airtime, to listen, and to connect. It's a signal that you are putting your ego aside and making space for connection. And even though it's subtle, it conveys feelings of appreciation and generosity that are worth their weight in gold. By the way, it's worth noting that you don't have to become passive and unopinionated to be more likable. In fact, occasionally saying something obviously outrageous is a great way to inject a little playfulness into a conversation and get things flowing. But note that these declaratives are, in a way, acting like questions or qualifiers, since they can't help but draw the other person in. Oh, I simply cannot wear light blue. It makes my eyeballs itchy just looking at it. Man, I hate light blue. They should make convicts wear it in prison as punishment. If the rule of 3 feels tricky to implement at first, don't worry. It can take time to break bad habits. One easy trick is to literally say whatever you were going to, but add, "Don't you think?" to the end of it. Light blue is such a weak color. Don't you think? It immediately changes the entire energy and flow of the conversation and takes little to no effort on your part. This has been Conversation Skills Training: How to Build Relationships, Navigate Any Situation, and Talk to Anyone. Written by Patrick King. Narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2023 by Patrick King. Production copyright by Patrick King.